And we're back with the Dark Reading News Desk here at Black Hat USA. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading, and joining me now is Bob Erdman, Associate VP of Research and Development at Fortra. Bob, thanks so much for joining us on the Dark Reading News Desk.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is great.
Appreciate you doing this. Fortra is perhaps best known for its adversary simulation tool, Cobalt Strike. You recently announced a joint legal action with both Microsoft and Health-ISAC that is aimed at stopping cyber criminals from basically using cracked legacy copies of the software. Talk a bit about what led you to take legal action against this group of bad actors.
Sure. So Fortra has been engaged with the problem of unauthorized usage of the software since we acquired the solution a few years ago. We've got research teams that are tracking where it's being shared, how it's being abused, and we take a lot of legal actions. We do hundreds of DMCAs and other legal filings every year. So we're having an effect, but it was really pretty quiet, and people didn't really know that we were doing it. And we decided it was time to really take a more public stance around this, that we aren't tolerating this kind of abuse, and we are pushing back on it as hard as we can with both other public and private partners.
All right. Well, speaking of partners, why pair up with both Microsoft and Health-ISAC in regard to this case? What are their interests in this?
Well, we've been working down this path on our side for a while, and working with some public and private entities, and Microsoft had started their own efforts around this and looking at the abuse that was happening because of their Windows ownership. As we looked at this type of abuse going on and we learned of each other's efforts, it was natural for us to combine. We knew things that Microsoft didn't know and had a unique data set. They had their own unique data set with some things we didn't know. Pushing it all together brought us a much larger set of targets that we could go after and a better way to enforce these kind of controls. Having Health-ISAC join us and represent their member organizations was great, and that was allowing us to bring in somebody more from the outside in and show an actual user side what's happening out there in the world as well, not just us complaining about them abusing our IP.
Sure. So for viewers who may be new to Health-ISAC, talk about what they do.
So they are a representative healthcare organization that has a lot of other members, and they do work with other security controls, and they were doing their own research into how some of their hospitals and other medical organizations were being targeted by malicious actors.
I see.
And how that occasionally had Cobalt Strike involved in it as well. So it was great to bring them in and show from a more outside stance, not one of the companies involved in the software, how things were being taken. And as we looked at where we might be able to do a legal filing against this, we could bring their member people from that area of the country for that area of the court, which was really important to us as how we process this.
Healthcare, hospitals and healthcare organizations in general have been specifically targeted by ransomware, so it's actually great to hear that they've got some sort of technology advocacy group that's involved in initiatives like these.
Yeah, they do, and I think it's going to be really great for us to have a long-term partnership with both of those organizations as we move this along.
Expand a bit on Fortra's role in this three-way partnership. What is Fortra bringing to the table?
Sure. So besides Fortra's data set, which had a lot of things that Microsoft maybe didn't know as we went out and approached this, Fortra, as the issuer of the licenses and the software, is able to determine when we observe a system out in the wild, is it an authorized or an unauthorized copy? So we can quickly make that determination and then point the legal process at the systems that we should be handling and make sure that there's no collateral damage, some valid users' infrastructure that might appear during an engagement that shows up. So that's one of the most important roles that we have. Of course, being the owner of the IP, that was very important in the civil filing, that we were able to come along and bring that part of the process.
So are we talking like pirated copies? Are we talking somebody taking and basically reselling under an illegal private label?
Not so much an illegal private label, but definitely sometimes private copies. We do see a few different paths of abuse. One, as you mentioned, is people have cracked some of the older versions.
Sure.
Mostly in the older versions, but getting around the licensing, altering the software. We're able to tell if anything has been changed in the software deployments. But then there are occasionally times when, like a malicious insider may have leaked the license, or somebody walked out after they maybe had a hack to an organization and had the software stolen from them. So we're also able to bring in the knowledge around those and make sure that those are included in the process as we go along.
Talk about what Fortra does to discourage bad actors from misusing something like Cobalt Strike. I assume there's some protections, but I assume there's also, you alluded to regular legal actions a few minutes ago. What does Fortra do to just make this distasteful?
Yeah, so there's a lot of legal actions going on, of course. We're tracking file sharing sites, who is selling it legally on the
Sure.
internet, maybe where it's being shared on social media, and taking actions against all of those standard things. Technically, we keep implementing more and more controls in the software as we release new versions. So when we do find artifacts out in the wild, we do tear those apart, reverse engineer them, see what's been done and how it's been done, and then change the software accordingly so those processes aren't available the next time. So every time we release a new version, we're putting in more and more technical controls around the process as well.
What, if anything, has changed since the legal action was opened? Are you seeing an impact already?
It feels like we've been doing this for a long time, but it's really only been about 4 months. We are seeing a fairly large impact out in the wild. We've had nearly 200 domains seized and sinkholed, so we're able to interrupt that C2 traffic, get some kind of victim identifications. And we've also seen greater than a 30% drop in observed systems out there. So we're seeing the trend go downward. It goes downward every day, which is excellent for us. We're seeing the kind of things that we expected, and a bit of a movement of where these systems are located towards countries that are less friendly with the US legal system. Another thing that we kind of expected. They're going to move off of this software to something else, move their infrastructure to places that are a little bit harder for us to touch. But we are pursuing them anywhere geographically that we see them, using the legal processes of that country or that region. So we expect to continue to see these numbers decline over time. And we're in it for the long haul with Microsoft. We expect this will be a years-long process, and we'll both be there.
Sure. Is this about what you expected, or has the reaction among these bad actors surprised you somehow?
I think it's been about what we suspected with how it's worked on the bad actor side. And the reaction that we got from the community at large, I think, was actually a lot better than we expected. Like I said, I don't think people realized we were actually fighting these problems in the past, because we kept it kind of quiet. And coming out publicly and having this big announcement that we're going after this, I think was a great thing.
All right. So what message would you like to send to criminals who are using these cracked copies of Cobalt Strike?
I think the biggest one is we're going to keep looking for you, we're going to keep finding you, and we're going to keep taking you down and passing that data along as we need to. We're in this for the long haul, and we're going to keep at it as long as we need to.
All right. Are you also seeing any response, perhaps, I don't know, fleeing to the dark web, or you mentioned some specific geographies that might perhaps be out of the reach of the legal system? What's showing up there?
We do see things showing up in the dark web, and generally, if somebody is selling copies, that's where we see it popping up. So we do have some threat actors that everybody's tracking, that we know where some of these are coming from, and they're being pursued. I think we're seeing less and less of it up on the open web now. The machine is pretty fast now to identify and issue takedowns. So that's going really well. So I think we'll see less and less of the software out there. Definitely it's trending towards the older versions. The newer ones are much harder to crack than the old ones, where we've taken all those paths away. So I think we'll continue to see those fingerprints over time disappear.
Bob, we appreciate the update on Cobalt Strike and the bid to keep it safe and secure. Thanks for joining us on the Dark Reading News Desk today.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Bob Erdman from Fortra. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment.